How are things going for you right now?
You know, things are going great. The transition is going well. Senator Corker and his team have been so helpful, and Senator Alexander has been right there with us to help us. Swearing in was January 3rd, and they were both with me. They escorted me on the floor. Former Senators Bill Frist and Bill Brock each sent letters, and then Justice Kavanaugh did my ceremonial swearing in, and of course Vice President Pence, whom I served with in the House, did the official swearing in.
Excellent. And you were able to get your first piece of legislation?
I was. You know, we've gotten our committee assignments. I have Commerce, Judiciary, Armed Services, and Veterans. Everything I asked for. So we are so fortunate to be able to continue to do good work for our men and women in uniform and our veterans. We did get our first piece of legislation filed, and this is something that Tennesseans have talked to me about time and again, and they do not think that abortion providers should be able to get Title X funds, which that is money that is designated for women's health care for women that are underserved. And we have over 13,000 community health centers in our country and 655 abortion clinics. And Tennesseans continually say that Title X money that is there for women's health needs to go to health centers that provide women's health. That way you get you serve the greatest need, and the money will meet the greatest need.
Tell me why, of all the things we could talk about filing, I guess, that you felt this was the one you had to file first.
I thought that it was important to do because it's important to Tennesseans. Taxpayers continually say taxpayer funds should not be used for abortion clinics. And look at Planned Parenthood. They will tell you their main business is abortion services, and it is not women's health care. And we want women who are underserved to be able to get the health care that they need to better their quality of life.
Well, we can't avoid it. We can't do an interview without talking, obviously, about what's going on in Washington right now with the partial shutdown. And I noticed in some of the bills, the two bills that went through yesterday, you voted against those bills.
I voted for the president's plan.
Okay.
And then I voted against Senator Schumer's plan.
Do you see any compromise in the works at all?
I do. Absolutely, I do. And you know, one of the things I think is important to note is that Tennesseans want to see our southern border secure. And they know that President Trump and Republican leadership have made 4 offers. There are 4 offers on the table. There was $30 billion, $25 billion, $12 billion, $5.7 billion, and the president has repeatedly said to Nancy Pelosi, call me, come negotiate. Put something on the table. But you know, when you're negotiating and you put an offer on the table, what do you expect? You expect a counter offer. And instead, it has been no. And I tell you one thing right now, if I were someone with a dreamer in my family, or if my church group was working with a family that had a dreamer, I would be very upset with the Democrat leadership right now, because those dreamers have been offered a 3-year legalization, and that is something they have sought for years. And there is a way to solve this problem, but it is going to require that the Democrat leadership make a counter offer, put something on the table, negotiate with Leader McConnell and with the president. There has to be a negotiation, and my hope is that this weekend we will see this worked out. It's time.
On the other side of the ledger, ma'am, I'm sure you've heard this, people will say, well, the president is not negotiating, the wall remains the key issue. Is the wall the thing that you think that's holding everything up?
Securing the southern border is what is the main thing. There's not going to be a concrete wall from sea to sea. It is a combination of fencing, of wall, but here's what you have to realize in this, that I think is so vitally important to realize. When you talk to the Border Patrol, they have consistently said they need three things. They need a barrier on the border, they need technology, and they need more Border Patrol agents and officers. Those are the three things that they're very consistent on. And the plan that the President and Leader McConnell had addresses those three needs of the Border Patrol. They are given a mission to defend that border and protect that border and to keep illegal entry from happening into the United States, whether it's drug trafficking, human trafficking, gangs, sex trafficking. They defend that border. And I think it is outrageous that what they tell us they need to do their job, we are not giving them to do their job and defend this nation's sovereignty.
I'm sorry, ma'am. What do you say to the critics who say the president said when he was running for election, Mexico will build a wall, Mexico will build a wall, and we're not saying that now. Now it's 5.4 billion, I believe, is what they're talking about. What do you say to that?
The wall needs to be built. And when you look at the fact that this will be a barrier that will slow down entry of drugs, and that is something that is going to stop these sex traffickers and these coyotes from illegally entering this country. That is something that is imperative for us to do.
Do you feel like the talking, when the president said Mexico would build a wall?
His comment was Mexico would pay for the wall.
Yeah.
And he has said several times, you know, he never said Mexico would write a check. But what we know is that we have to protect our nation's sovereignty and protect our communities. You know, when I talk to law enforcement, one of the things they will tell me is until we secure that southern border, every town's a border town and every state's a border state because of the impact of drugs and gangs and traffickers on our nation's streets and communities. And everyone wants to make certain that their communities are safe.
Tell me why some people out there will look at what's happening here and look at even your supporters of the president and say, you're using federal employees as pawns here. First off, what's your feeling about so many of these federal employees? They're in financial troubles now, as many say. What do you?
Oh, it is, to me, just really a very sad situation. It's deeply regrettable that we have not been able to get a counteroffer and get going on a negotiation. As today, as we speak, we are hopeful that Senator Schumer will join with Leader McConnell and the President and begin to find a resolution to this. Out of the employees that are not paid the $800,000, and bear in mind, 75% of the federal government is fully funded and functioning. You've got 25% of the government that is in a shutdown. That's why it is a partial shutdown, but it's a complete shutdown for those 800,000. 400,000 are deemed non-essential. 400,000 are deemed essential federal workers.
Now, there have been options from the House plans to get the people back to work first. Are you in favor of that or against that?
What we have to do is resolve this issue with the funding. And when I talk to Tennesseans, they are saying, make certain that you resolve this issue of securing the southern border. And here's a great example of that. I'd run to the grocery store the other day, and I was in the produce aisle, and this gentleman came past me with his cart, and then in a couple of minutes he came back past me again. He said, I know who you are. I am a veteran. I fought to defend this nation. You need to stay firm and get that southern border secure because this crime ends up in our community and on our streets.
How long will it take before this continued showdown, and the critics often say, you've heard all the critics,
Sure.
you say, does it make sense that we keep talking about building some type of barrier when the House says any type of barrier at all is not going to fly here, but we keep pushing this idea of you got to have a barrier?
But they've always voted for a barrier. President Obama expanded the barrier. President Bush, President Clinton, they have always voted to expand that barrier and increase that security. They have now gotten to the point that they do not want to support expanding that barrier. And that is not fair to our communities. It's not fair to our states. It is just, to me, when you talk to families that are affected or have lost loved ones because of fentanyl and heroin that is coming onto our streets, then you know that this is a barrier that needs to be expanded, and we have to stop illegal entry into this country.
You know, when we talk about that, and we talk about the employees, and we talk about how some of them are, you know, going without pay. Well, we even had a slowdown this morning at LaGuardia with some air traffic controllers. How long can this go? How long can you let the air, you know, because now the safety of the flying public, and in many ways the American public's on the line.
It has gone too long. And I find it so, as I said, to me it is deeply regrettable that the Democrats will not come to the table with a counteroffer and negotiate.
They say the same thing about you guys, though.
There are 4 offers that have been on the table for quite a while. And they do not want to give President Trump a win. And we want to solve the issue. They want the issue.
Now, as we look here as far as the people working without pay, I think that's fair.
Of course not. And that is why we have passed legislation, the president signed, everybody will be back paid, but that doesn't help for today or tomorrow.
Not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
And the FBI has already said it's going to affect their operations somewhat. We know the TSI says it operates.
Right, TSA, IRS, that is correct. And it is important that these individuals be paid for the work that they are doing.
Overall, like you say, you think there's going to be some movement possibly this
I do.
year. Yeah.
I certainly do. And securing that southern border and giving our Border Patrol what they need is vitally important. Just as it is when we talk about funding our military, it is vitally important when we give those men and women in uniform their mission. It is vitally important that we give them the tools to do that job. When we talk about our foreign service that is out there, working on the diplomatic channels, it is vitally important that we give them the protection they need and the tools they need to do their job. And that is what our Border Patrol is saying. We need 3 things. Give us these 3 things in order to do our job.
Does it bother you that you and Senator Alexander might disagree on some of these issues? The senator says he does not want to see federal employees be affected at all by this.
Right, and I have great respect for Senator Alexander. I don't want to see federal employees affected. That's why I find it deeply regrettable that there has not been a counteroffer that has been made, and I look forward to getting this resolved really quickly.
You feel this is an issue that's firmly in the hands of Speaker Pelosi? Do you think this is her?
I think that I think one of the reasons you've got Democrats that are beginning to move away from Speaker Pelosi and are saying we need to be negotiating is because they are seeing families in their communities that are impacted, and they think that it is inappropriate to not put a counteroffer on the table and negotiate this through to the end.
You know that the president, and you remember the meeting, said, "I'll take it. I'll take the hit on this.
Right.
I'm going to be the one." So is his responsibility?
It is everybody's responsibility.
So you don't think it's just him?
I think it is everybody's responsibility. And when offers are made and put on the table, it is the responsibility of the Democrats to make a counteroffer.
Anything else you want to add, Nick?
Can't think of anything.
We need a quick two-shot.
Happy to be